pensando.
My name is Raoul Mora, and I'm at the Mexican Heritage Center in Stockton. The collection of dolls that you see next to me and behind me are part of a collection that I started for my daughter Carla, who will be 49 in May. So it's almost a 50-year-old collection. And I started collecting these pieces for her so that she would see herself reflected in some of the dolls, and also for her to become more aware of our culture and the history of the Mexican people. I didn't want her just to be aware of Barbies and Eurocentric dolls, so my interest was to introduce her to her background. As I continued collecting, most of these I picked up in secondhand stores, garage sales, flea markets, antique shops, and as I continued to collect, I became more and more aware of the beauty in the making of these dolls. The craftsmanship, the way that the clothes were made, the way that the figures were painted, made me aware that they were too important for me to allow her even to play with them after a while. So I would put them in her room and would tell her that she could look at them, but not play with them the way that she did with her other dolls. As she grew up, I continued to collect. And I think right now my collection of Mexican dolls is probably over 100. What you see behind me is only part of that collection. I try to get a variety in what I have displayed here, and the dolls that I put up reflect the diversity of Mexico. A lot of us are only aware of the mestizo culture, which is what we think the main culture of Mexico is. But many of us are completely unaware of the diversity in the indigenous cultures of Mexico. States like Oaxaca, Michoacan, in the Yucatan, parts of Guerrero. I find these areas more interesting to me because they're not what most of us see on the northern part of the country or in the United States. Just as a lot of Americans are not that familiar with the cultures or customs of other parts of the United States, unless they've done extensive travel. In Mexico, a lot of the Mexicans aren't that familiar because they don't get to travel from one state to the next, or they don't have the means of attending museums or being exposed to a lot of the diversity of the country. When I put these up, a couple of people were wondering where these dolls were from, and what they represent are the tarumaras of northern Mexico. And they're dressed the way that a lot of the Tarahumara Indians still dress. This is just one of many groups or tribes or nations that you will find in Mexico. When I talk about diversity, that's an example. This little man, for instance, he's from the state of Guerrero. He is dressed holding a torito that is loaded with fireworks. And what he does during fiestas, he runs around and chases the people, and when he does, of course, all of these fireworks and firecrackers are exploding and pinwheels are turning, and it's just part of the fun from the fiesta. But when you don't know about it, you begin to wonder what is that thing that he's carrying. So this exhibit tells you a lot about the culture of Mexico, along with the way that they dress. When you look at these dolls, some of them are made out of woven palm, some of them are cloth, celluloid, different materials, some of them are wood. This one, for instance, is from the state of Chiapas, and she is carved out of wood. Her clothing is very authentic. It's embroidered and made out of wool the way that they do in Chiapas because it's up in the hills and it's very cold, especially in the evening. Then you have dolls that look more like the areas of Jalisco, which are these, the China Poblana, the Chavos. As you look at them, some of them look almost human or very real. They have a lot of character. This little Chavo, for instance, I've got to find a hat for him because part of collecting is not only conserving, but repairing, washing their clothes when they've been dirtied by children playing with them, sewing them, putting them back together again. To me, these dolls are very important because they're part of the arts and crafts of Mexico. And they're also reflective of the history of Mexico. When I look at these, I see a lot of them which are dressed like peones wearing white. This little doll, for instance, is dressed the way that they were probably dressed up until the 1830s, when all of the men's clothing was white manta. As you go to wealthier parts of the country, you have dolls that are very elaborately dressed, dolls that are made out of different materials, which will also show the wealth of that particular group of people. This little doll is rather elegant. She's made out of silk. She has pantaloons or bloomers. So she's probably from around the early 1900s. And she's wearing a beaded top. And she has the comb that represents the strong influence of Spain in dress during that time of Mexico. A lot of the people of Mexico during the time of Porfirio Diaz very often preferred to relate more strongly to Spain and Europe than they did to Mexico itself. Their whole interest was to look and act as European as possible. So when I look at this little doll, it reflects that time in history. These are made out of paper mache, and I was told that each one has a name on them, and they were very popular. They come from the state of Celaya. At one time they were quite common, and not knowing what they represented, someone told me that the way they were dressed and the way they were named, that it's kind of hard to say, but that they represented people of the streets or women of the streets or prostitutes. So as you do research about what you collect, you learn more and more. My mother was born in the state of Michoacan, and she came when she was 10 years old in 1910 when the revolution started. And she always thought that the family was going to return, the way that many refugees always have hopes of returning to their country. But we never did. But she would always tell me about the culture and the people of Michoacan. She was very proud of being from that state. And these little viejitos represent la danza de los viejitos, the dance of the old men. When I see these dolls, to me, they make me think of my mom. They make me think of how if she hadn't come to the United States during that time when the revolution started, more than likely I wouldn't be standing here in front of you talking about this. The variety that you see here represent not only young and beautiful dolls, but they represent the different ages of the people of Mexico. For instance, this is a very old man. You can see the wrinkles. And this couple is a very old couple. When my daughter was little, she was very scared of this doll. She said she looked like a witch. And I told her, no. She's simply an old woman. She's probably someone's grandmother. She's a very kind lady. So she began to see these dolls in a very different way. We normally see things by our experiences in life. And if our experiences are limited, very often we don't really see or appreciate things when we look at them. And it's not until things are explained to you do we get a better understanding. And it's this understanding of different cultures and different people that I think bring us closer together as people of the world. Very often we're born into a family where we are told we are Mexican and Mexican Americans, but we know nothing about our culture, nothing about our history or our past. And it's only through education that we're able to truly understand who we are. I remember being perhaps in middle school when Queen Elizabeth was going to be crowned, and all the news and newspapers were talking about the big coronation. And I remember my mother at the ironing board ironing, and at the time when she said it, it just didn't make any sense to me. She said, oh, ya se acaban con esa vieja, con esa señora que va a ser reina, que no saben que nosotros también venimos de reyes y emperadores. So what that translates to, she said, oh, I'm so fed up with hearing about Princess Elizabeth being crowned. Don't they know that we too come from emperors and kings? And at the time, it just didn't click. It wasn't until much later that I started doing more research about the pre-Hispanic cultures of Mexico that I understood what she meant. That we too come from nobility, or that we too had nobles. before the conquest. So this collection is just not a collection of toys, it's also a collection of our history and our culture and our past.